Thomas Hobbes. Birth and early years. Thomas Hobbes was born on April 5th, 1588, in Westport, a parish in Wiltshire, England, as Europe braced itself for the Spanish Armada's imminent invasion. The atmosphere of uncertainty and fear at the time of his birth is often referenced as a symbolic prelude to Hobbes's later preoccupation with security and order in human life. In his own words, Hobbes famously remarked, "Fear and I were born twins." Hobbes was born into a modest family. His father, Thomas Hobbes Sr., was a local vicar at Charlton and Westport, but he was an ill-tempered man, embroiled in frequent disputes. One particularly notorious altercation outside his church led to his permanent flight from Westport, leaving his family behind. Hobbes's mother, whose name remains unknown, raised him under challenging circumstances, though she had the support of her brother, Francis Hobbes, a prosperous glove maker. The absence of Hobbes's father created a void that was filled by his uncle, who played a pivotal role in ensuring that young Hobbes received a quality education. This foundational period was significant in shaping Hobbes's intellectual trajectory, as his uncle's influence enabled access to resources and opportunities that a boy of his social standing would not typically enjoy. Education at Westport and Magdalen Hall. At the age of 4, Hobbes began his formal education at the Westport Church School, where he exhibited an early aptitude for reading and writing. By the time he was 7, he had progressed to studying Latin and Greek, a reflection of the Renaissance emphasis on classical education. Hobbes's facility with classical languages would later become one of his hallmarks as a scholar and translator. At the age of 14, Hobbes entered Magdalen Hall at the University of Oxford, a decision facilitated by his uncle's financial support. The university, steeped in scholastic traditions, focused heavily on Aristotelian philosophy and theology, a curriculum Hobbes found stifling and outdated. His dissatisfaction with the rigid scholastic framework marked the beginning of his intellectual rebellion against traditional modes of thinking. Hobbes preferred the works of ancient Greek and Roman authors like Homer, Thucydides, Cicero, and Lucretius, whose pragmatic and often materialistic worldviews resonated with him. Thucydides, in particular, left a lasting impression, as Hobbes saw him as a historian of human conflict and political dynamics, themes that would later permeate his own work. Earlier career and patronage. After graduating in 1608, Hobbes entered the service of the Cavendish family as a tutor for William Cavendish, the future Earl of Devonshire. This position provided Hobbes with stability and access to a network of influential figures in English society. His role as a tutor was more than a job. It became a gateway to intellectual circles and travel opportunities that would shape his worldview. Hobbes accompanied William Cavendish on a European tour, a rite of passage for young aristocrats. During these travels, Hobbes encountered the intellectual currents of the continent, including the burgeoning scientific revolution. He was exposed to the works of Galileo Galilei, which inspired him to adopt a mechanistic view of the universe, and René Descartes, whose ideas on reason and doubt further influenced Hobbes's philosophy. The Renaissance and humanism's impact. The intellectual milieu of Renaissance Europe profoundly impacted Hobbes. This period was characterized by a revival of classical learning and an emphasis on human potential and reason. Hobbes' study of humanist texts helped him develop a deep appreciation for language and rhetoric, tools he would later use masterfully in his own writings. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Hobbes was not drawn to religious mysticism or metaphysical speculation. Instead, he gravitated toward practical and empirical approaches to understanding the world, reflecting the influence of Renaissance humanism. He admired Lucretius's materialist philosophy, which posited that everything in the universe could be explained by the motion and interaction of matter. This materialist perspective would become a cornerstone of Hobbes's own philosophical system. Personal traits and intellectual development. Hobbes was known for his insatiable curiosity and sharp wit, qualities that made him a formidable thinker, but also a polarizing figure. His critical approach to established norms often alienated him from more conservative scholars. Despite this, he maintained a pragmatic demeanor, understanding the importance of patronage and political alliances in advancing his career. Hobbes's early intellectual development was marked by a growing awareness of the limitations of human knowledge. He was deeply influenced by the uncertainties of his time, including political instability, religious conflict, and scientific upheavals. These experiences instilled in him a lifelong quest for certainty and order, themes that would dominate his later works. Conclusion: Foundations of a thinker. Hobbes's early life and formative years set the stage for his later philosophical achievements. His humble beginnings, rigorous classical education, exposure to Renaissance humanism, and encounters with the intellectual currents of Europe provided him with a unique perspective on the human condition. These experiences not only shaped his views on human nature and governance, but also prepared him to confront the profound challenges of his time with a bold and innovative philosophical vision. Historical context: the political landscape of England. Thomas Hobbes was born into a period of immense political and social upheaval in England. The late 16th and early 17th centuries were marked by the consolidation of state power, religious divisions, and the tensions between monarchy and parliament. These dynamics would profoundly influence Hobbes's philosophical views, especially his emphasis on the necessity of a strong, centralized authority. England under Elizabeth I, 1558 to 1603, was a relatively stable kingdom, but her death in 1603 brought about significant changes. The accession of James I, (1603 to 1625) marked the beginning of the Stuart dynasty. James I, a firm believer in the divine right of kings, often clashed with Parliament over matters of taxation and governance. These disputes laid the groundwork for the constitutional crises that would dominate the 17th century. Hobbes was an eyewitness to these tensions. By the time he began writing his major works, England had descended into the chaos of the English Civil War, 1642 to 1651. The conflict was essentially a struggle between royalists, supporters of King Charles I, and parliamentarians who sought greater parliamentary control over the monarchy. Hobbes's experiences during this turbulent period deeply shaped his belief that unchecked human conflict could only be restrained by a powerful, absolute sovereign. Religious turmoil in England. The religious context of Hobbes's time was no less significant. The Protestant Reformation had fractured Christendom, leading to violent conflicts across Europe. In England, the split from the Catholic Church under Henry VIII has had, well, let me repeat that all over again. In England, the split from the Catholic Church under Henry VIII had created a Protestant state, but divisions between Anglicans, Puritans, and Catholics persisted. Under James I and Charles I, tensions between these groups escalated. The Puritans, advocating for stricter reforms of the Church of England, gained political influence, while Catholic sympathies with the monarchy led to widespread mistrust. Religious disputes often intertwined with political conflicts, further complicating governance. Hobbes was largely indifferent to theological debates, favoring a pragmatic approach to religion. However, he understood the destabilizing potential of religious conflict. In Leviathan, he argued for the subordination of religious institutions to the sovereign, emphasizing that a unified authority was essential to prevent sectarian violence. The broader European context. Hobbes's ideas were also shaped by events on the European continent. The 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648, one of the most devastating conflicts in European history, raged during Hobbes's lifetime. Initially a religious war between Protestant and Catholic states within the Holy Roman Empire, it evolved into a broader struggle involving major European powers like France, Spain, and Sweden. The war caused widespread destruction, economic collapse, and loss of life, profoundly influencing Hobbes's pessimistic view of human nature and his insistence on the necessity of a strong state to maintain peace. He viewed the chaos of the 30 Years' War as a stark example of what could happen when competing powers lacked a central authority to mediate disputes. The Scientific Revolution. Hobbes lived during the Scientific Revolution, a period of groundbreaking advancements in science and philosophy. Figures like Galileo Galilei, Johannes Kepler, and René Descartes were transforming the way humans understood the natural world. The mechanistic view of the universe, which saw the world as governed by physical laws rather than divine intervention, deeply influenced Hobbes' thinking. Hobbes met Galileo in 1636 during a visit to Italy, an encounter that left a lasting impression. Galileo's work on motion and mechanics inspired Hobbes to adopt a scientific approach to understanding human behavior and politics. He sought to develop a science of politics grounded in empirical observation and rational analysis, much like the natural sciences of his time. Philosophical influences. Hobbes' intellectual development was also shaped by the philosophical current of Renaissance humanism and early modern rationalism. Renaissance humanism emphasized the study of classical texts and the importance of human reason, while rationalism, championed by thinkers like Descartes, focused on the use of reason as the primary source of knowledge. Hobbes was particularly influenced by Lucretius, whose materialist philosophy rejected the idea of a spiritual realm, and by Thucydides, whose account of the Peloponnesian War provided a realistic view of human conflict and political power. These influences reinforced Hobbes' belief in the importance of understanding human nature to develop effective systems of governance. Economic transformations. The 17th century was a period of significant economic change, with the growth of trade and the rise of capitalist economies. The expansion of overseas empires and the development of financial markets created new opportunities but also exacerbated social inequalities. Hobbes was acutely aware of these economic shifts and their impact on society. In his writings, he often highlighted the dangers of competition and greed, which he believed could lead to conflict and instability without a strong governing authority to regulate human behavior. Hobbes' role in the historical context. Hobbes was not merely an observer of these events. He actively engaged with them through his writings and political activities. As a tutor to the Cavendish family, he was closely connected to the English aristocracy, and his patronage provided him with access to influential circles. During the English Civil War, Hobbes fled to France, where he completed Leviathan. His decision to support the monarchy and advocate for absolute sovereignty was controversial, earning him both supporters and detractors. Conclusion: the context of a thinker. The historical context of Hobbes' time provides crucial insight into his philosophical ideas. The political instability, religious conflicts, scientific advancements, and economic transformations of the 17th century were not just backdrops to his life, they were the very forces that shaped his thought. Hobbes' insistence on the necessity of a strong centralized authority can be understood as a response to the chaos and uncertainty of his era, making his work both a product of his time and product of its time and a timeless reflection on human society. Philosophical system: human nature, a mechanistic and materialistic perspective. Thomas Hobbes' philosophy begins with a fundamental question: what is human nature, and how does it shape society? For Hobbes, understanding human nature required stripping away the complexities of social and cultural influences to uncover the raw, innate tendencies of humans in a quote-unquote state of nature. Hobbes was a staunch materialist, rejecting the dualism of mind and body espoused by thinkers like René Descartes. He believed all phenomena, including thoughts, emotions, and will, could be explained through the motion of physical matter. This mechanistic worldview, inspired by the scientific advances of his time, posited that humans were essentially biological machines governed by physical laws. At the core of Hobbes' view of human nature is the concept of self-preservation. Humans, he argued, are driven by a relentless pursuit of their own survival and desires. This pursuit often leads to conflict, as individuals compete for limited resources, recognition, and security. Hobbes famously described life in the state of nature as solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. The state of nature and the war of all against all. Hobbes' state of nature is a hypothetical construct, an imagined world without government, laws, or social contracts. In this condition, individuals are in constant competition, driven by fear, mistrust, and the desire for power. Hobbes identified three primary causes of conflict in the state of nature. 1. Competition. Individuals compete for scarce resources. 2. Diffidence. Fear of attack leads individuals to strike preemptively. 3. Glory. The desire for reputation and recognition fuels conflict. The result of these factors is a war of all against all, where individuals live in perpetual insecurity. This bleak vision of human nature and the state of nature underscores Hobbes' belief that a strong governing authority is essential to prevent chaos and ensure peace. Reason and the pursuit of peace. While Hobbes had a pessimistic view of human nature, he believed that humans possess the capacity for reason, which enables them to recognize the benefits of cooperation and peace. In the state of nature, reason leads individuals to seek agreements or covenants, quote-unquote, that establish mutual protections. Hobbes outlined a set of laws of nature which are rational principles that guide individuals toward self-preservation and social harmony. The first and fundamental law of nature is to seek peace whenever possible. The second law is to lay down one's natural rights in exchange for the protection of a sovereign authority. The social contract. Hobbes' social contract theory is one of his most influential contributions to political philosophy. It is a solution to the anarchy of the state of nature, where individuals collectively agree to surrender certain freedoms to a sovereign in exchange for security and order. In Hobbes's view, the social contract is not a literal agreement, but a theoretical explanation of the origin of political authority. By entering into this contract, individuals create a commonwealth, a political body governed by a sovereign with absolute power. The sovereign and absolute authority. Hobbes's concept of sovereignty is central to his political philosophy. He argued that the sovereign must possess absolute authority to effectively enforce laws and maintain peace. This authority could reside in a monarch, an assembly, or any governing body, but it must be indivisible and uncontested. Hobbes justified absolute sovereignty by emphasizing the dangers of division and rebellion. A sovereign's power, he argued, is derived from the consent of the governed, but once established, it cannot be challenged without risking a return to the chaos of the state of nature. Religion and the state. Hobbes viewed religion as a potential source of division and conflict. He argued that religious authority should be subordinated to the sovereign to prevent sectarian violence and ensure a unified state. In Leviathan, he proposed that the sovereign should control religious doctrine and practice, making it an instrument of social cohesion rather than division. Hobbes's views on religion were controversial as they challenged the traditional role of the church and its independence from political authority. His materialist philosophy also led some critics to accuse him of atheism, though Hobbes himself claimed to be a Christian. Epistemology, reason, sense, and knowledge. Hobbes's epistemology, or theory of knowledge, was grounded in empiricism and mechanistic materialism. He believed that all knowledge originates from sensory experience, which is the result of external objects interacting with the senses. Hobbes rejected the idea of innate ideas, arguing instead that human understanding develops through the accumulation and processing of sensory impressions. He emphasized the importance of reason as a tool for organizing and interpreting these impressions, allowing individuals to form coherent ideas and judgments. Science of politics. Hobbes's ambition was to create a science of politics, modeled on the precision and rigor of the natural sciences. He sought to apply the principles of motion and mechanics to the study of human behavior and social systems. In Leviathan, Hobbes systematically analyzed the foundations of political order, beginning with individual human nature and proceeding to the formation of society, government, and law. This methodical approach set a new standard for political philosophy, emphasizing the importance of empirical observation and logical reasoning. The influence of fear. One of Hobbes's most distinctive insights is the role of fear in human life and society. Fear of death and insecurity drives individuals to seek protection and stability, even at the cost of their own freedoms. Fear also underpins the authority of the sovereign, whose power rests on the ability to enforce laws and deter rebellion. Ethics and morality. Hobbes's ethical philosophy is often described as utilitarian, as it focuses on maximizing collective well-being and minimizing harm. He rejected traditional notions of natural law as divine or moral principles, arguing instead that morality is a human construct that emerges from the social contract. For Hobbes, concepts of right and wrong are not intrinsic but are defined by the laws established by the sovereign. This relativistic view of ethics reflects his belief that order and stability are the ultimate goals of political and moral systems. Conclusion: a systematic vision. Hobbes's philosophical system is remarkable for its coherence and ambition. Rooted in materialism and influenced by scientific revolution, his ideas provide a comprehensive framework for understanding human nature, society, and governance. By grounding his philosophy in the realities of human behavior and the conditions of his time, Hobbes created a body of work that remains deeply relevant to modern discussions of politics, ethics, and the nature of authority. Introduction to Leviathan, Hobbes's magnum opus. Thomas Hobbes's Leviathan, first published in 1651, is widely regarded as one of the most important works in the history of political philosophy. Its full title, Leviathan, or The Matter, Forme, and the Power, let me repeat that again. The matter, forme, and power of a commonwealth ecclesiastical and civil underscores the book's dual focus on political and religious authority. Hobbes conceived of the text as a systematic exploration of human nature, the origins of society, and the necessity of an absolute sovereign to prevent chaos and conflict. The Leviathan was written during the English Civil War, a period of intense political and social upheaval, and reflects Hobbes's deep concern with the dangers of disorder. The titular Leviathan is a metaphor for the state, a powerful artificial entity created through the social contract to maintain peace and stability. The structure of the Leviathan. Leviathan is divided into 4 parts. 1. Of man, analyzes human nature and psychological foundations of society. 2. Of commonwealth, examines the formation and structure of political authority. 3. Of a Christian commonwealth, explores the relationship between religion and politics. 4. Of the kingdom of darkness, critiques religious and philosophical doctrines that undermine social order. This methodical structure allows Hobbes to build his arguments step by step, beginning with individual human behavior and culminating in the grand design of a stable political system. Part 1 of Man. In the first part of Leviathan, Hobbes lays the groundwork for his political philosophy by exploring human nature. He begins with a mechanistic view of humans, describing them as bodies in motion, driven by external stimuli and internal desires. Hobbes identifies 2 fundamental principles governing human behavior. 1. Desire, the pursuit of what is perceived as good. 2. Aversion, the avoidance of what is perceived as harmful. From these principles, Hobbes derives the concept of power, which he defines as the ability to achieve one's goals. Humans, he argues, are naturally power-seeking beings, driven by a perpetual desire for self-preservation and satisfaction. Hobbes also introduces the concept of felicity, or happiness, which he describes as the continuous fulfillment of desires. However, because resources are limited and desires are infinite, competition and conflict are inevitable in the absence of a regulating authority. The state of nature. Hobbes' description of the state of nature is one of the most famous and controversial aspects of Leviathan. In this hypothetical condition, there is no government, law, or social structure. Individuals are equal in their ability to harm one another and are driven by self-interest, leading to a state of constant war. Hobbes' grim portrayal of the state of nature emphasizes the importance of fear in human life. Fear of death and insecurity motivates individuals to seek peace and stability, even at the cost of personal freedom. This fear, combined with human reason, forms the basis of the social contract. Part 2 of Commonwealth. The second part of Leviathan is Hobbes' detailed account of the social contract and the formation of political authority. He argues that individuals in the state of nature rationally agree to create a commonwealth, a political body that provides security and order. The commonwealth is established through a covenant in which individuals collectively surrender their natural rights to a sovereign authority. This sovereign, whether a monarch, an assembly, or another form of government, possesses absolute power to enforce laws and maintain peace. Hobbes outlines several key characteristics of the sovereign. Indivisibility. The sovereign's power must be undivided to prevent internal conflicts. Supremacy. The sovereign is the ultimate authority in all matters, including law and religion. Accountability. The sovereign is not subject to the will of the governed, as its authority derives from the social contract. The artificial person of the Leviathan. Hobbes describes the commonwealth as an artificial person, a metaphorical Leviathan created by the collective will of its members. This artificial person embodies the unity and power of the state, which acts on behalf of its citizens to protect their interests. The image of the Leviathan, famously depicted on the book's frontispiece, illustrates this concept. The Leviathan's body is composed of countless individual figures representing the people who form the commonwealth. The head, representing the sovereign, governs the body and ensures its survival. Part 3 of A Christian Commonwealth. In the third part of the Leviathan, Hobbes turns his attention to the relationship between religion and politics. He argues that religious authority should be subordinated to the sovereign to prevent sectarian conflicts and ensure social cohesion. Hobbes offers a rationalist interpretation of Christianity, emphasizing obedience to the sovereign as a religious duty. He rejects the idea of independent ecclesiastical authority, which he sees as a threat to the unity of the state. Hobbes also critiques the misuse of religious doctrine, arguing that false interpretations of Scripture can undermine social order. He advocates for a state-controlled church that promotes moral behavior and loyalty to the sovereign. Part 4 of the Kingdom of Darkness. The final part of Leviathan is a critique of philosophical and religious ideas that, in Hobbes's view, perpetuate ignorance and disorder. He uses the term kingdom of darkness metaphorically to describe the spread of false doctrines and superstitions. Hobbes targets several groups in this critique, including scholastic philosophers, for their reliance on Aristotelian metaphysics, which Hobbes considers outdated and irrelevant; clerics, for promoting doctrines that challenge the authority of the sovereign; popular superstition, for fostering fear and irrationality among the masses. Reception and legacy of Leviathan. Leviathan was both celebrated and criticized upon its publication. Supporters praised its bold and systematic approach to political philosophy, while detractors condemned its materialism, perceived atheism, and defense of absolute authority. Despite the controversy, Leviathan has had a profound and lasting impact on political thought. It laid the foundation for modern social contract theory, influencing philosophers like John Locke, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and Immanuel Kant. Its emphasis on the necessity of a strong state continues to resonate in discussions of governance and authority. Conclusion: the masterpiece of Hobbesian thought. Leviathan encapsulates Hobbes's vision of human nature, society, and politics in a work of remarkable clarity and coherence. Its systematic approach and timeless insights make it a cornerstone of political philosophy, offering a compelling argument for the necessity of a powerful sovereign to maintain peace and prevent conflict. Ethics, morality rooted in the laws of nature. Hobbes's ethical theory is tightly interwoven with his political philosophy, as he viewed morality not as an independent domain but as a construct born out of the need for social order. In his materialist and mechanistic worldview, ethical behavior is a rational response to the natural human desire for self-preservation and peace. The laws of nature. Hobbes defined the laws of nature as rational principles that guide individuals toward actions that ensure self-preservation. Unlike traditional interpretations of natural law grounded in divine command or inherent morality, Hobbes's natural laws are pragmatic and secular. The first and fundamental law of nature is the pursuit of peace, while the second is the willingness to relinquish certain freedoms for the sake of mutual security. These laws form the ethical foundation of the social contract and the establishment of the Commonwealth. Morality as a social construct. For Hobbes, concepts such as justice, fairness, and virtue do not exist independently of society. In the state of nature, there is no morality, only the pursuit of survival. Morality emerges from the social contract, where individuals agree to abide by common rules and norms to maintain order and security. Justice, in Hobbes's view, is the fulfillment of covenants. An action is just if it aligns with the agreements individuals have made within the framework of the Commonwealth. This relativistic approach to ethics underscores Hobbes's belief in the primacy of social order over abstract moral ideals. Religion, a tool for social cohesion. Hobbes's views on religion are among the most controversial aspects of his philosophy. Writing during a time of intense religious conflict, Hobbes sought to reconcile faith with the need for political stability. His treatment of religion is deeply pragmatic, emphasizing its role in maintaining social cohesion rather than as a source of ultimate truth. Religious authority and the sovereign. Hobbes argued that religious authority should be subordinated to the sovereign to prevent sectarian conflict and ensure a unified state. He proposed that the sovereign should regulate religious practices and doctrines, making them instruments of social harmony rather than division. In Leviathan, Hobbes advocated for a Christian commonwealth where the sovereign has ultimate control over religious matters. He justified this position by appealing to the dangers of independent religious authority, which he believed could undermine the stability of the state. Rationalist interpretation of Scripture. Hobbes approached the Bible with a rationalist lens, emphasizing its moral and political teachings over its theological doctrines. He rejected literal interpretations of the Scripture, arguing that many biblical passages were metaphorical or allegorical. Hobbes's rationalist approach extended to his critique of religious superstition and dogma. He believed that many religious beliefs were the result of ignorance and fear, perpetuated by clerics seeking to manipulate the masses. Criticism of religious divisions. Hobbes was highly critical of the divisions within Christianity, particularly between Catholics and Protestants. He viewed these divisions as a source of conflict and instability, arguing that they distracted from the primary goal of religion, promoting social order and ethical behavior. Science, a mechanistic view of the world. Hobbes was deeply influenced by the scientific revolution of the 17th century, particularly the work of figures like Galileo Galilei and René Descartes. He sought to apply the principles of mechanics and physics to the study of human behavior and society, creating a science of politics. Materialism and mechanism. Hobbes's philosophy is grounded in materialism, the belief that all phenomena, including thoughts and emotions, can be explained through the motion of physical matter. He rejected the dualism of mind and body, arguing instead that the mind is a product of physical processes in the brain. This mechanistic view of the world informed Hobbes's understanding of human nature. He likened humans to machines driven by the motions of desire and aversion. This analogy allowed Hobbes to analyze human behavior in a systematic and scientific manner. Empiricism and epistemology. Hobbes was an empiricist, believing that all knowledge originates from sensory experience. He argued that external objects interact with the senses, producing impressions that the mind organizes into ideas. Hobbes also emphasized the role of language in shaping knowledge and understanding. He argued that clear and precise definitions are essential for meaningful communication and rational thought. This focus on language reflects his broader commitment to creating a scientific and systematic philosophy. Science of politics. One of Hobbes's most ambitious goals was to create a science of politics modeled on the precision of the natural sciences. In Leviathan, he systematically analyzed the principles of human behavior, the formation of society, and the structure of government. Hobbes's scientific approach to politics marked a departure from traditional political philosophy, which often relied on abstract principles and moral ideals. By grounding his analysis in empirical observation and logical reasoning, Hobbes set a new standard for the study of political systems. Integration of ethics, religion, and science. Hobbes's philosophy is remarkable for its integration of ethics, religion, and science into a cohesive system. His materialistic and mechanistic worldview provided a foundation for understanding human nature, while his pragmatic approach to ethics and religion emphasized the importance of social order. By applying scientific principles to the study of politics, Hobbes created a groundbreaking framework that continues to influence modern philosophy and political theory. His work demonstrates the power of systematic thinking in addressing complex questions about human behavior, society, and governance. Introduction to Hobbes's impact on later philosophical and political thought. Thomas Hobbes's philosophy, particularly as articulated in Leviathan, has had a profound and enduring influence on Western thought. His ideas about the social contract, human nature, and political authority provided the foundation for modern political science and inspired debates that continue to this day. Hobbes's work has been both celebrated for its innovation and critiqued for its implications, particularly his defense of absolute sovereignty and materialist worldview. Hobbes's influence extends across disciplines, from political philosophy to ethics, theology, and even the natural sciences. His legacy can be seen in the works of later philosophers such as John Locke, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Immanuel Kant, and contemporary thinkers who grapple with questions of authority, liberty, and human motivation. Hobbes and the development of social contract theory. Hobbes is often regarded as the founder of modern social contract theory, a framework for understanding the origins of political authority and the legitimacy of governance. His conception of the social contract as a rational agreement to escape the state of nature led the groundwork for subsequent theorists who adapted and critiqued his ideas to fit their own visions of society. John Locke. Locke, like Hobbes, sought to explain the origins of political authority through the social contract. However, Locke diverged sharply from Hobbes in his characterization of the state of nature and the role of government. While Hobbes saw the state of nature as a condition of perpetual conflict, Locke viewed it as a state of relative peace and equality governed by natural law. Locke's theory emphasized the protection of individual rights, particularly life, liberty, and property, and he argued for a limited government that derives its authority from the consent of the governed. Locke's ideas became foundational to liberal political theory and influenced the development of constitutional democracies, particularly in the United States. Jean-Jacques Rousseau took Hobbes's concept of the social contract in a radically different direction. In The Social Contract, 1762, Rousseau rejected Hobbes's pessimistic view of human nature and argued that the social contract should aim to achieve the quote-unquote general will, which is a collective good that transcends individual interests. Rousseau critiqued Hobbes's emphasis on absolute sovereignty, advocating instead for participatory democracy and egalitarianism. Despite these differences, Rousseau's work builds on Hobbes's central insight that political authority is not natural but constructed through human agreement. Immanuel Kant. Kant was deeply influenced by Hobbes's political philosophy, particularly his emphasis on rationality and the need for lawful governance. However, Kant sought to reconcile Hobbesian realism with a moral framework grounded in autonomy and universal principles. In his political writings, Kant developed a vision of perpetual peace based on the rule of law, republican government, and international cooperation. While Kant's emphasis on individual freedom contrasts with Hobbes's defense of absolute sovereignty, both thinkers share a commitment to the idea that political order must be rooted in reason. Hobbes and the rise of political realism. Hobbes's stark depiction of human nature and his defense of a strong centralized authority have made him a foundational figure in the tradition of political realism. This school of thought, which emphasizes the role of power and self-interest in politics, has had a profound impact on modern international relations theory. Realism in international relations. Hobbes's description of the state of nature as a condition of war has been likened to the anarchic nature of the international system, where states, like individuals in the state of nature, operate in an environment without a central authority. Political realists such as Hans Morgenthau and Kenneth Waltz have drawn on Hobbesian principles to argue that power and security are the primary drivers of state behavior. Critiques of Hobbesian realism. Critics of Hobbesian realism argue that his emphasis on conflict and self-interest overlooks the potential for cooperation and ethical considerations in politics. Liberal theorists, for example, emphasize the role of international institutions, economic interdependence, and shared values in promoting peace and stability. Despite these critiques, Hobbes's insights into the dynamics of power and conflict continue to resonate in discussions of global politics, particularly in debates about sovereignty, security, and the balance of power. Materialism and the Enlightenment. Hobbes's materialistic philosophy, which explains all phenomena in terms of physical motion, had a significant influence on the intellectual currents of the Enlightenment. His rejection of metaphysical explanations and emphasis on empirical observation and logical reasoning anticipated many of the key ideas of the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment. Influence on empiricism. Hobbes's empiricist epistemology, which asserts that knowledge is derived from sensory experience, influenced later empiricists such as John Locke and David Hume. Locke expanded on Hobbes's ideas in his Essay Concerning Human Understanding, while Hume further developed a naturalistic account of human behavior and ethics. Impact on secularism. Hobbes's materialism and critique of religious authority contributed to the secularization of philosophy and political theory. His insistence on the subordination of religion to the sovereign anticipated later Enlightenment critiques of organized religion and its role in public life. Hobbes in contemporary thought. Hobbes's work continues to inspire and provoke debate in contemporary philosophy, political science, and related fields. His ideas are frequently revisited in discussions of state power, human rights, and the challenges of governance in an increasingly interconnected world. Liberal critiques and reinterpretations. Modern liberal theorists often critique Hobbes's defense of absolute sovereignty, arguing for the importance of individual rights, check on state power, and democratic governance. At the same time, some liberals find value in Hobbes's emphasis on the rule of law and the need for a stable political order. Postmodern perspectives. Postmodern thinkers have engaged with Hobbes's work in diverse and often critical ways. Michel Foucault, for example, interrogated Hobbes's concept of sovereignty in his analysis of power and governance, while Giorgio Agamben explored the implications of Hobbesian thought for understanding states of exception and political exclusion. Relevance to modern challenges. Hobbes's insights into the nature of conflict and the role of fear in human behavior remain highly relevant to contemporary issues, from the challenges of political polarization and authoritarianism to debates about surveillance, security, and the balance between liberty and order. Conclusion: Hobbes's enduring legacy. Thomas Hobbes's impact on later philosophical and political thought is profound and multifaceted. His pioneering work on the social contract, human nature, and the foundations of political authority continues to shape our understanding of governance, morality, and society. Hobbes's ideas have inspired a wide range of responses, from Locke's liberalism to Rousseau's egalitarianism and modern realism. His materialist philosophy and scientific approach to politics remain cornerstones of Western intellectual history, offering timeless insights into the complexities of human behavior and social organization.